Fan a mother's prayer answered. The autumn rain drummed against the pharmacy windows like tiny fingers tapping out a worried rhythm. Sarah Martinez stood at the counter, her 6-month-old daughter Emma cradled against her chest, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow over the sterile white interior, making everything feel cold and unwelcoming. Sarah's brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame her tired face. She wore her best brown coat, the one she saved for important occasions, though the fabric had seen better days. Beneath it, her gray sweater was soft against Emma's cheek as the baby shifted restlessly in her arms. The pharmacy was quieter than usual for a Tuesday afternoon. Behind the counter, the pharmacist moved with practiced efficiency, sorting medications and answering phone calls. The shelves stretched high toward the ceiling, filled with bottles and boxes that promised healing and relief. For most people who walked through these doors, those promises could be kept. For Sarah, they felt increasingly out of reach. Emma began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up as she prepared to cry. Sarah bounced her gently, whispering soft reassurances. "Shh, baby girl. Mama's here. We're going to get your medicine and you're going to feel so much better." The words came easily, but Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. In her purse, she had exactly $43.67. She had counted it 3 times on the bus ride over, hoping somehow the numbers would change. They hadn't. Peterson had been very clear during their appointment yesterday. Emma's ear infection was severe and needed immediate treatment. Without the antibiotic, it could worsen, possibly affecting her hearing. The prescription was for a 10-day course of medication that would clear up the infection completely. It was routine, Dr. Peterson had assured her. Nothing to worry about. But Dr. Peterson didn't know about Sarah's situation. How could he? Sarah had become an expert at hiding her struggles, at maintaining the appearance that everything was fine. She dressed Emma in clean clothes, kept herself presentable, smiled at the right moments. No one needed to know that she was barely keeping her head above water. The insurance situation was complicated. Sarah's coverage from her previous job had expired 2 months ago, right after Emma was born. She had applied for state assistance, but the paperwork was still being processed. Everything took time, she had been told. Be patient. In the meantime, she was caught in limbo, responsible for costs that seemed to multiply faster than she could calculate them. Her job at the local diner brought in just enough to cover rent and basic necessities, but there was no room for emergencies, and a sick baby definitely qualified as an emergency. Sarah had already borrowed money from her sister twice this month. She couldn't ask again. Pride aside, her sister Maria was struggling too, working 2 jobs to support her own family. The pharmacist looked up from his computer screen. "Sarah Martinez." "Yes, that's me." Sarah approached the counter, adjusting Emma's weight in her arms. The baby had settled into an uneasy quiet, her small body warm with fever. "I have Emma's prescription ready," the pharmacist said, reaching for a small white bag behind him. "That'll be $128.49. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had hoped somehow that it would be less. Maybe there had been a mistake in the doctor's estimate. Maybe there was a generic version available. Maybe miracles still happened. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Could you check if there's a generic version? Or maybe, is there any kind of payment plan?" The pharmacist's expression softened. He had seen this scenario too many times before. "Let me check on the generic option for you." He turned back to his computer, fingers clicking across the keyboard. Sarah stood there swaying slightly to keep Emma calm, and tried to think of solutions. She could call in sick to work tomorrow and pick up an extra shift later in the week, but that would only bring in another $40, and she needed the money today. Behind her, she heard the soft footsteps of another customer entering the pharmacy. The electronic chime sounded as the door opened and closed. Sarah didn't turn around. She was too focused on willing the pharmacist to find a miracle in his computer system. "I'm sorry," the pharmacist said, looking back up at her. "The generic version is only about $15 less. It would bring the total to $113.62. Still not enough. Not even close." Sarah felt her chest tighten, and she took a careful breath. Emma needed this medication. There had to be a way. Could I pay part of it now and pay the rest tomorrow?" Sarah asked, though she knew the answer. Pharmacies didn't typically work that way, especially not for antibiotics that needed to be started immediately. The pharmacist hesitated. "I'm not really supposed to do split payments, especially for medications that need to be started right away. The infection could worsen if treatment is delayed." Sarah nodded, understanding but feeling desperate. "I know. I'm waiting for insurance approval, and my daughter really needs this medicine." Emma chose that moment to begin crying again, a weak but persistent sound that made Sarah's heart ache. She bounced the baby gently, making soft shushing sounds, but Emma's discomfort was clear. The fever was making her irritable, and the ear infection was obviously causing pain. "Is everything all right here?" The voice came from behind Sarah, quiet but confident. She turned to see a man in his early 30s standing a respectful distance away. He wore a well-tailored dark coat over a crisp white shirt, and his dark hair was styled perfectly despite the rainy weather outside. There was something about his presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Oh yes, we're fine," Sarah said automatically, the response she had perfected over months of struggling alone, just working out some insurance details. The man studied her face for a moment, and Sarah had the unsettling feeling that he could see right through her careful facade. His expression wasn't judgmental though. "If anything, I couldn't help but overhear," he said gently. Your daughter needs medication. Sarah felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. It's nothing we can't handle, she said, though the words felt hollow even to her. Emma's crying intensified and Sarah found herself bouncing more urgently, trying to soothe the baby while managing her own rising panic. The man stepped slightly closer, and Sarah caught a hint of expensive cologne mixed with something else, maybe cedar or sandalwood. How much is the prescription? He asked the pharmacist directly. Sir, I can't really discuss other customers' information, the pharmacist replied, though his tone suggested he was sympathetic to everyone involved. The man nodded understanding. Of course. He turned back to Sarah. I'm sorry if this seems forward, but I have a daughter too. I know how frightening it is when they're sick. Something in his voice made Sarah look up at him more carefully. There was genuine empathy there, not pity or condescension. She has an ear infection, Sarah found herself saying. It's pretty severe and the doctor said she needs antibiotics right away, and insurance isn't covering it. Sarah shook her head. I'm between policies right now. It's complicated. The man was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider something. Then he stepped closer to the counter and spoke in a low voice to the pharmacist. Whatever the cost of the medication is, please add it to my account. I'll take care of it. Sarah stared at him in shock. I know. I can't let you do that. You don't even know me. You're right. I don't know you, the man said, turning back to face her. But I can see that you're a good mother who's trying to take care of her sick child. Sometimes that's enough. The pharmacist looked between them uncertainly. Are you sure about this? Absolutely sure, the man said firmly. Please ring up the medication. Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I don't understand. Why would you do this for a stranger? The man's expression grew thoughtful. A few years ago my wife and I were in a similar situation. Our daughter Sophia was born premature and we faced some unexpected medical costs. A stranger helped us when we needed it most, and they told us the only payment they wanted was for us to help someone else when we could. Emma had quieted in Sarah's arms, as if she could sense that something important was happening. The baby's dark eyes looked up at her mother with that solemn expression babies sometimes wore, as if they understood more than adults gave them credit for. I can't just accept charity, Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. The relief of knowing Emma would get her medicine was already washing over her in waves. Well, it's not charity, the man said gently. It's one parent helping another. And someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you'll remember this moment and pass it forward. The pharmacist cleared his throat softly. The total is $113.62 for the generic version. The man nodded and pulled out his wallet, extracting a sleek credit card. Please charge it to my account. As the transaction processed, Sarah stood there holding Emma, trying to process what was happening. Strangers didn't usually step in to solve problems like this. People were generally too busy with their own lives, their own struggles. Yet here was this man, dressed like he belonged in boardrooms and expensive restaurants, offering to pay for her daughter's medicine without asking for anything in return. I don't even know your name, Sarah said as the pharmacist handed over the white bag containing Emma's antibiotic. The man smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look younger and more approachable. I'm Michael Chen, Sarah Martinez, she replied automatically. And this is Emma. Michael looked down at the baby with genuine warmth. Hello, Emma. You're going to feel so much better once you start taking your medicine. Emma, as if responding to his gentle tone, made a soft cooing sound that wasn't quite a cry. It was the first peaceful sound she had made since they arrived at the pharmacy. The instructions are on the label, the pharmacist said, handing Sarah the bag along with an information sheet. Give her one dose twice a day with food. The infection should start clearing up within 48 hours, but make sure to finish the entire course even if she seems better. Sarah nodded, clutching the medication like the precious thing it was. Thank you. I don't know how to… this is… No thanks necessary, Michael said. Just take good care of that little one. As they walked toward the pharmacy exit together, Sarah found herself studying Michael more closely. His clothes were definitely expensive, and there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was used to being in charge. But he had approached her situation with genuine kindness, not the sort of patronizing attitude she might have expected from someone who was obviously much wealthier than she was. Can I ask what you do for work? Sarah said as they paused near the door. Michael hesitated for just a moment. I work in healthcare administration. I spend a lot of time thinking about how to make medical care more accessible to people who need it. It was a careful answer, Sarah noticed, but she didn't press. Everyone was entitled to their privacy, especially someone who had just done such a generous thing for a complete stranger. The rain had lightened to a gentle drizzle, and the gray afternoon seemed less oppressive than it had when Sarah first arrived at the pharmacy. Emma was calm in her arms, and the weight of the medicine in the bag felt like hope made tangible. Do you need a ride somewhere? Michael asked as they stood under the pharmacy's small awning. Sarah shook her head. The bus stop is just around the corner. We'll be fine. Michael nodded, but he didn't seem satisfied. The weather's pretty miserable for waiting at a bus stop with a sick baby. We're used to it, Sarah said, then immediately regretted the words. They revealed too much about her circumstances. If Michael noticed her slip, he didn't comment on it. Instead, he pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times. I've called a car service for you. It should be here in just a few minutes. Mr. Chen. Michael, you've already done too much. It's Michael, please. and it's really not a big deal. The car will take you wherever you need to go." Before Sarah could protest further, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver got out and approached them with an umbrella, ready to escort Sarah and Emma to the car. "This is too much," Sarah said again, but she was already moving toward the vehicle. The thought of getting Emma home quickly and starting her medication was too appealing to resist. "The only thing that would be too much is letting you wait in the rain with a sick baby when there's an easy solution," Michael replied. As the driver held the door open for her, Sarah turned back to Michael one more time. "How do I find you?" "To pay you back, I mean." Michael's smile was gentle but firm. "You don't. You just focus on getting Emma better, and someday, when you can, you help someone else who needs it." Sarah settled into the warm, leather-lined interior of the car with Emma in her arms. Through the tinted window she watched Michael walk to his own car, a modest but well-maintained SUV that somehow surprised her. She had expected something flashier. As her car pulled away from the curb, Sarah looked down at the white pharmacy bag in her lap. Inside was 10 days' worth of medicine that would cure Emma's infection and ease her pain. It represented more than just antibiotics. It represented the kindness of a stranger who had seen a mother in need and acted without hesitation. Emma made a soft sound and nestled closer against Sarah's chest. The baby's fever was still present, but she seemed more comfortable now that they were out of the cold rain and heading home. The drive to Sarah's apartment building took only 15 minutes, but it gave her time to process what had just happened. She thought about Michael's words about paying it forward, about how someone had helped him and his wife when they needed it. It created a picture of kindness passing from person to person, creating connections between strangers who might never meet again, but who were linked by moments of generosity. When the car pulled up in front of her building, the driver got out again with his umbrella and escorted them to the front door. "Have a good evening, ma'am," he said politely. "I hope the little one feels better soon." Sarah's apartment was small but clean, decorated with the care of someone who made the most of limited resources. She had painted the walls herself in warm colors, and Emma's corner was filled with toys from garage sales and gifts from friends. It wasn't much, but it was home. She prepared Emma's first dose of antibiotic according to the pharmacist's instructions, mixing it with a small amount of formula to make it easier for the baby to take. Emma fussed initially but eventually swallowed the medicine, making a face at the unfamiliar taste. "I know it doesn't taste good, baby girl," Sarah murmured as she rocked Emma in the old chair she had inherited from her grandmother. "But it's going to make you feel so much better." As evening settled over the city, Sarah found herself thinking about Michael Chen again. She wondered about his daughter Sophia, about the stranger who had helped his family when they needed it. The idea that kindness could ripple outward like stones thrown into a pond was both beautiful and humbling. Emma fell asleep in her arms as the sun set outside their window, and for the first time in days, her breathing seemed easier. The medication was already beginning to work, just as the doctor had promised it would. Sarah sat in the quiet apartment, holding her sleeping daughter and thinking about the events of the day. Tomorrow she would go back to work at the diner, serving coffee and taking orders and doing her best to provide for Emma. But tonight, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the knowledge that there were still good people in the world. People who helped without expecting anything in return. She thought about Michael's words about paying it forward. Someday, when Emma was older and Sarah was more financially stable, she would find a way to help another parent in need. Maybe it would be paying for someone's prescription, or maybe it would be something else entirely. The specific act didn't matter as much as the intention behind it. 2 days later, Emma's fever broke, the baby's appetite returned, and her energy levels began to bounce back to normal. By the end of the week, she was her usual happy self, babbling and smiling as if the ear infection had never happened. Sarah never saw Michael Chen again, though she found herself looking for him whenever she was in that part of town. She had tried to research him online, curious about the man who had stepped in to help her, but Michael Chen was too common a name to yield any useful results. It was as if he had appeared when she needed help most and then vanished back into the city. Months passed. Emma grew stronger and healthier, hitting all her developmental milestones on schedule. Sarah's insurance situation was eventually resolved, and while money was still tight, the worst of the crisis had passed. She never forgot the day in the pharmacy, though. The memory of that unexpected kindness became a source of strength during difficult moments. One afternoon, almost a year after the incident at the pharmacy, Sarah was at the grocery store when she overheard a conversation at the customer service counter. A young father was trying to return formula he had bought with a credit card, explaining that his wife had lost her job and they needed the cash for other necessities. The store policy didn't allow returns on formula without a receipt, which he had lost. Sarah watched the man's shoulders slump in defeat as he prepared to leave with the formula he couldn't afford to keep. She thought of Michael Chen, of his quiet confidence when he had stepped forward to help her and Emma. She thought of his words about paying kindness forward. "Excuse me," Sarah said, approaching the customer service counter. "How much did the formula cost?" The young father looked at her in surprise. $28, but I couldn't find my receipt, so Sarah handed the customer service representative $30 in cash. "Please give him store credit for the formula, and let him keep the extra $2. The man stared at her in disbelief. "I can't let you do that. You don't even know me." Sarah smiled, remembering how she had said almost exactly the same words to Michael. "I know you're a father trying to take care of his family. Sometimes that's enough." As she walked away from the customer service counter, leaving the young father with store credit and a confused but grateful expression, Sarah felt something click into place. She understood now what Michael had meant about the true nature of his gift. It wasn't really about the money he had spent on Emma's medication. It was about the reminder that people could choose to help each other, that small acts of kindness could create connections across the invisible barriers that usually kept strangers apart. That evening, as she gave Emma her bath and got her ready for bed, Sarah thought about the chain of kindness that had started with a stranger helping Michael and his wife, continued with Michael helping her and Emma, and now included her help for the young father at the grocery store. She wondered how far that chain might extend, how many lives it might touch. Emma splashed happily in her bath, a healthy, thriving 1-year-old who had no memory of being sick or of the pharmacy visit that had changed everything for both of them. But Sarah remembered, and she always would. The memory served as a reminder that even in her darkest moments, help could come from unexpected places, and that someday she might be the unexpected help that someone else desperately needed. As she tucked Emma into bed that night, Sarah whispered a quiet thank you to Michael Chen, wherever he was. He had given her more than money for medicine. He had given her a model for how to move through the world with generosity and grace, and a reminder that the best way to honor a gift was to pass it along to someone else who needed it. The autumn rain had returned, drumming against the windows of their apartment with the same rhythm Sarah remembered from that day at the pharmacy. But now the sound seemed different. Instead of anxiety and worry, it carried the promise of renewal, of seasons changing, of difficult times eventually giving way to better ones. Emma slept peacefully in her crib, healthy and safe, while outside the rain washed the city clean and prepared it for whatever tomorrow might bring.